Thank you. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Swager,
Here.
Mrs. Davis,
Here.
Mr. Benton,
Here.
Mrs. Boer, here. Mrs. Thomas, here.
And to you, Dr. Wagner.
Sure. In the next part of the agenda, then, we are going to focus on swearing in of newly elected board members. As we're aware, there was an election in November, and our 3 incumbent board members were again elected for another 4-year terms. We're very happy about that. And to help us this evening, we have Judge Andrew King from the 5th District Court of Appeals to administer the oath. And I thought what we could do is we'll take it alphabetically by last name. So Mr. Benton, and then we'll go right down the line. Okay.
You
Mrs.
want me to
Davis
go
and Mrs.
first?
Thomas. Yes, you can. And then we have the actual oath for you. So I think Rick, we wanted to come over to you.
Just put yours inside.
However you want to get it. Wherever you want it. It's not too cold.
All right. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Alan Bennett, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties as a board member in the Johnstown-Monroe to the best of my ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during my continuance in said office during the continuance of said office and until my successor is chosen.
Did you do this?
And next we have Mrs. Davis. So Mrs. Davis will ask you to do the same thing.
Oh, thank you. No,
Oh,
they're
okay.
waiting for you.
Okay. I didn't know he was trying to take your picture.
No.
Hopefully not.
I didn't know all that.
You heard it. All right. I, Manny Davis, do solemnly swear and affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties as a board member in the Johnstown-Monroe to the best of my ability and in accordance with the laws now in force and hereafter to be enacted during my continuance in said office and until my successor is chosen.
Last but very not least, we have Mrs. Thomas.
Repeat after me. I am. Do solemnly swear. And affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties as a board member in and for
Thank you. We really appreciate, yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
you
much
being
for
here.
coming out.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks again, Judge King. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Go on to reading of the notice of the meeting.
Sure.
That is. Yes.
This is a public meeting of the Board of Education for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. Upon request of the superintendent, the district shall make reasonable accommodation for a person with a disability to be able to participate in this activity. A recording shall be made of each meeting of the board as an administrative aid and shall be preserved as public documents of the board.
Thank you. Go ahead with the any additions or deletions to the agenda.
No, I do not have any.
Can we get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Gotcha. Call the roll.
Mr. Benton? Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Sorry, the screen is loading. There we go. Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Nomination for president.
I nominate Tim Swager.
I'll second it.
Discussion. Call the roll.
You need a resolution. There's no way.
Oh,
Next one's a resolution.
Close the nomination.
And then there's a.
Can I get a motion to close?
I'll make the motion.
So moved.
All right. Now we'll go to the election of the president.
Actually, you got to vote on the nomination to close.
Oh, yeah. Call the roll on the close.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes. I think we do that every year.
Yeah.
Resolution 24-01-003 is the election of the president.
So if I can get a motion,
I'll make the motion.
if I can get a second.
So moved.
I thought I was going to die on the
Change your
floor.
mind.
And that's a motion to appoint Tim
Tim
Swager.
Swager as president. Yeah.
And if we can call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Abstain.
The next item is nomination of vice president.
I'll make the motion to nominate Amanda Davis.
Well, second. I need a no, I need to, do I have to call the roll
Yeah,
on that?
No, you have to call the roll on that.
Just a motion to
Yeah, the next-
close the nomination. of
Well, the
Vice
next
President.
resolution then is, 24-01-004 is to close the nomination of the vice president.
If I can get a motion to close the
I'll
nomination.
close it. I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas? Oh,
No.
excuse me. Swager, Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
No.
Mrs. Boer
No.
and Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Resolution 24-001 is election of vice president. So that would be Amanda Davis.
Can I get a motion to appoint Amanda Davis as the vice president?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Call the roll.
Just a moment. Okay. Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
No.
and Mrs. Thomas.
No.
Resolution 24-101-006 is approval of consent agenda.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
You want me to run through consent agenda items?
Yeah, if you would. I didn't
Okay.
go through those.
So the so the first item, or really the second item there, is established for meetings. We have the normal cadence for meetings. You can see there, except we did have a few alterations because of a few items. Next board meeting on the 22nd is typically a work session, but we wanted to make that a regular session. We have a couple of presentations, so we wanted to change that from work to regular session. Because of spring break and the way the schedule normally falls, we would have typically had a board meeting on March 25th, but we're recommending we change that to March 18th, so it better fits again with spring break. Memorial Day is May 27th. May 27th, so we wanted to move our work session there to May 28th. And then there is, I think Mrs. Thomas, you noted there was a Veterans Day on the 11th.
Veterans Day is on
Typically,
November
we
11th.
we'll have school and hold meetings. So if the board has concern, then we can talk about that. And then normally, and we moved the work session on November 18th because of the week of Thanksgiving, in case people were going out of town early. So we moved that a week early. So those are the only changes to the schedule.
On February 26th, you sent an invite to our email, to my email for a save the date of February 26th,
Yeah,
5 to 9.
yeah, that might be, I might have to change that meeting. I don't know yet. What we're working on there is that education workforce development. So I wanted to say the date if I need to. And there's so many different businesses we're trying to get for. I'm not sure that's more, but it may. So if that becomes the case, I'll have to go off cycle and ask for special meetings, or unless we can get done early. But I'm not sure we do that at times.
I just
Okay.
wanted-
Yeah, but no, thank you. That's a good catch. I just
I
didn't.
know it's a leap year, and I'm like, well, maybe the wrong date. was
No,
there.
no. No, that's a good catch. I don't have that other part finalized yet, so we're working with businesses. The next set of items are board action items, and I can go through that list, but really it's making sure that we have newspapers, not many left, but the newspapers are identified there. And it talks about some roles and responsibilities of the treasurer and eventually the superintendent. Again, you can read all those. If you have questions, we can go through. There's a board service fund that's listed there. We have the ability to have some light refreshments if needed, possibly even meals for meetings. Performance bonds are in there. Tax collections, which our treasurer would take care of. And then purchasing agents is all there under O. Mrs. Drummy and I are going to go through those purchasing agents and look. We know we use some of those, but we're going to see if we need to refresh that list at some point. So we're going to have that as an action item. Records Commission is there. We've been good about that. Legal counsel we need at times, and we keep the board updated there. The next two items are important, and when there's typically an emergency or an urgent need, let's say that, I have the authority to temporarily hire personnel prior to the next board meeting. And the next one's equally important, accept resignations prior to a board meeting. So when I sign off on an accepted, they become immediately accepted, and then the board will vote on that at the next meeting. The next items are Ohio School Boards Association, which we've been involved with. There's Ohio Education Policy Institute, which a few of us have been involved with through the years. And then the Business Advisory Council with Educational Service Center. And then if we also choose to form one on the side, we could do that. But for the most part, it would be Licking Regional Educational Service Center. So that's all of consent agenda.
I just had one. Did we get a motion on this? Discuss.
You gotta go.
We did this, right?
You did
Consent.
motion.
I made the motion.
Yeah, we
On the
did the motion.
consent, I just want to make sure we made
Yeah.
the consent agenda.
What's that?
Yeah, I think I did. And Amanda seconded.
Yeah.
Okay. There were a couple of minor changes on this from previous years, other than dates. Purchase contracts, nothing excess of 25,000 was a change.
Yeah, we brought that down actually because I think it's better to have alignment with the purchasing authorities coming by. If we get close on something, I'm bringing to the board, for example, demolition of their former board office work. Yeah, I'd rather have a better line with our policy.
Yeah, we had temporarily raised that to 75,000 during the construction because we didn't want to come back every time during construction. But now that we've completed that major portion of it, we were going to put it back to what it was. So just for your information, I did have the cooperative purchasing programs. That's just allowing us to participate in, not actually expend any dollars to be in those, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Sometimes there's state bidding as
Yeah.
well too, which helps us. But like I was saying, Mrs. Drumming, I want to go through and look at those because some of those we use more than others. And this was a good reminder to see if we should keep all these other more, sometimes more, see if we need all of these. There's none out there that I'm aware of that we're not using. It's just that we don't know if the list needs to be that long anymore.
Anyone else have any questions, comments?
Did the OSBA fees go up
They're per
for
pupil, right?
5,919?
It's per pupil. I could check the price. The price per pupil did not go up, but if our number of enrolled students changed, it would go up
Or down?
or down. Exactly.
Our enrollment is in flux.
Right.
You know, because
Mhm.
you have new building, projects that, and also, as you know, demolition of homes too. So we've lost, we believe, over 60 homes so far for economic development projects.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
That is a limit of 1 year, just this time.
Right.
So we guide ourselves.
Yes. There's a sunset provision for all of this, so it would not, there's no continuation beyond this school year for an organization with contracts like this.
And just for my own edification, is this calendar year or school year? Calendar year, everything. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
And then the next section, Mr. Swager, are all about establishing committee and liaison appointments.
All right. If I can get a motion,
I'll make the motion.
and can I get a second?
Second.
All right. Who wants what committees? We'll just go down through these like
Yeah.
we have in the past. I mean, that's typically.
Yeah.
Buildings, grounds, and safety. Ann, that was you. You want you want to stay?
I'd
You
like
too.
to remain, but just whatever you want to do.
I don't think anyone's fighting you for it.
Arm wrestle.
I'll be second.
So Miss Thomas will be on there with Miss Boober.
Sure you don't want to go back to policy with that?
I am. I'm gonna go after that. You wait to see.
Look, Ellen's.
I'm gonna put you on
Begging her.
insurance.
Communications. We want to move on to communications. Who was on
I
communications?
was. I'll still do that.
Am I the backup on that?
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, you're the backup.
I mean, is everybody good with
Mhm.
continuing curriculum?
That's me and Ann.
And we good with staying with
Mm-hmm.
Miss Davis and Miss Thomas? Finance?
That was Ruth Ann and I. So is that still okay? Everybody?
Still okay. I'd like to remain on strategic planning, so I didn't want to get too
Well, I
far
think-
ahead of myself.
I think you two vote.
Okay.
I don't, unless someone else
No.
has a
Comes in there?
disagreement,
No.
right?
I just want to make sure we divide it up to where everyone's got enough time to go, to the meetings and not
Do you want
overload.
someone else to do
I-
it, Ruth Ann, or you want?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
So on finance, is Ruth Ann the primary and Alan the
Mm-hmm.
secondary?
That's a difference in what it was before, but.
Oh, I'm asking.
Let him.
Yeah.
Alan will be-
Primary.
All right, Alan will be the primary and Ruth Ann will be secondary. Insurance,
It should be Ruth Ann is the primary.
And that is Ann and Ruth Ann, except Ruth Ann's suggesting Alan would be a good one for insurance.
No, I think Ruth Ann has the expertise to be able to do that. And the leadership skills to help us in that area.
Oh,
well, let's just have the,
But you guys have a good thing going. Like you have a lot of.
You do have a lot of
Momentum.
expertise in that area, Ruth Ann, really.
Keep
realistically.
made me feel good. I-
No, it's the truth. Right? It's a fact.
Okay, I'll stay, but I really wanted you to do it.
who's your secondary on insurance?
Hands
Ann.
in there.
Ann, are you staying, Ann?
Yeah, if Alan wants to do it.
No, I'd prefer not to.
All right, on the policy.
That's me first,
See, I wanted to do
and we
policy.
can buy.
But then I'm usually the second one.
And Ruth
She-
Ann wants
I
to
want
do
to trade you.
policy.
She wants to trade.
I wanted to trade insurance for policy.
I would rather stay on the policy if I could.
I won't embarrass you, stay on policy.
Okay.
Amanda, do you want to stay on policy or would you rather switch?
And take finance or insurance.
Or,
Yeah.
well, I don't know what else you have. You got communications.
Okay.
I'm trying to think, who's on what.
You're the expert
I'm trying to
in
look at all
policy.
these.
She's the expert in policy too, right? So I believe that.
Maybe we could like rotate you guys out for meetings. The
Maybe when you're
secondaries.
out of town, you can't be there. You could have a
You'd be the
third.
first person I'd call anyway.
Okay, well, let's do that.
Okay.
So are we appointing 3 to that?
We are, in case of absence.
She's our-
her
Yeah.
job
You
may-
could put an alternate.
Well,
in there.
actually, Alan's been traveling a lot lately, so it could be
So
between the two of us.
we'll have Amanda, Alan, and Ruth Ann.
As an alternate.
Strategic planning, economic development, and construction projects.
That's one we changed a little bit because of construction, obviously on the horizon. So
Yep.
we added that.
That would be-
I was going to say, all right, if I stay on that?
No. Have we disagreed?
No.
Okay, good.
All right. Myself and, well, I was going to go first on that because I'm not first on any committee.
Just wait.
All right. Ruth Ann will be, that's right. It's the only committee I'll be in lead on. And then technology.
That is Alan, and then
That's
me.
And then Amanda. That's
He's
okay.
first.
All right. Does everybody have that? Do you think you have them all written down correctly?
You want me- I can go through real quick. I'm not sure.
Yep. That'd be
So I have
helpful.
buildings, grounds, and safety. I have Ann Thomas, Ruth Ann Boer, communications, Ruth Ann Boer, Tim Swager. I do have you on that.
Yep.
Curriculum is Amanda Davis and Ann Thomas.
Yep.
If I'm wrong. Finance, we have Ellen Benton and Ruth Ann Boer. Insurance, I have Ruth Ann Boer and Amanda Thomas. Policy,
Ann Thomas.
I'm sorry, who did I say?
Amanda Thomas.
Which
Sorry, I'm thinking of
Yet
your
to be
daughter.
elected.
I'm thinking your daughter. Don't do that to me. Okay, sorry. I've done that before. I called Ann Amanda one time, and I thought, I don't know if she meant it for her daughter. Policy, I have Amanda Davis, and I have Alan Benton, and then an alternate is Ruth Ann. Strategic planning, economic development, construction projects, I have Tim Swager first, and then Ruth Ann Brewer second. And then technology, I have Alan Benton and Amanda Davis.
Sound right to everybody? All right. OSBA Capital Conference Delegate. We didn't go to the Capital Conference.
No, we didn't
I
go.
was gonna.
That's Alan Benton.
What? I was supposed to go?
Yeah, I think you were the delegate.
I'm sorry. I apologize to the board for not attending.
Oh, no, there was an old.
Yeah, I'm sure there was an alternate too. Who's my alternate?
Amanda.
No,
No, she was.
You can see we're all fighting over.
no,
this one.
I'm the
You're
student
student
achievement. I'm
achievement.
student
Yeah,
achievement.
You were student liaison, yeah.
Yeah, and I stand by.
Who's the alternate to Alan on the Capitol Conference?
I don't
I
feel
don't
like
know.
I don't think we did, but I
Set
thought we just
the-
did.
Alan was so excited to go, we did name and all that.
I
Okay,
really don't
Ruben.
think we, I think we
I
just
don't
said
think we did.
Alan, and then I think you were the student liaison.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'll be
I think
the
that's what
alternate delegate. I'll ensure that Mr. Benton
it is.
goes,
Okay.
unless somebody else wants to be the alternate.
No,
Nope.
you're good. That's good.
The legislative liaison, Ann, wasn't that you?
Yeah, that
Yeah, I
sounds
think so.
really, that sounds
good to
right.
me. Sounds
Yeah.
good to me.
And then that would, Ruth Ann, you'd be the
Is there-
delegate,
Yeah, that's,
the alternate.
Yeah, sure.
And then Amanda, you would be the student achievement. Everybody got that?
Mhm.
All right.
And if you can't go, call an appointment. Isn't that how it works?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
I called him.
Before you leave today, I actually have Mrs. Drummond, I printed up and made sure with Mrs. Lowe that we have all the description for the committees for OSB and contributors.
Oh, okay.
We thought we should look those up too. So talk about those on.
Yes. All right.
So could you explain to me again who's what for the committees? Because I didn't
for committees,
catch the.
just copy
No,
it.
I didn't. The legislation.
Alan, all you have to
Sure,
remember
Alan
is the
Benton.
delegate.
Okay.
And then
Oh, that's
should
Ann
anybody
and
not
Ruben.
be able to do it? we'll
Benton,
call you.
Swagger, Thomas,
And then
Brewer,
we're all on
Davis.
one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
We didn't
Yeah.
do this.
We should know what we got signed up for.
Legislative.
We did, yes.
Is
So I-
there, is there a time that we go to this? I'll
Monday.
I'll
That's what
just
he,
ask that question.
I'm gonna make sure that
It's on
they
Monday?
can email you some of these things because it talks about really the delegate. Really, if you go to the Capitol Conference, it's up to you. I typically go. And then the legislative, if you look at that one, it tells you a little bit about the responsibility or objectives there, and the same thing with student achievement. So
is that on the Sunday night or is that on
Monday. The business of legislation is Monday.
The Monday morning.
Tuesday's a trade show.
the Monday? They do it on Monday morning.
yeah,
I knew they held
usually
that
the
Sunday night.
presentations. They have presentations on
Yeah.
Tuesday. Just new board members, updates and all that on Sunday.
Do I need to call the roll?
Or public records training, if you'd really like to do that on Sunday.
I don't think we need. Well,
Sounds exciting.
No, I'm teasing.
I don't think we need a vote on this.
Well, I did a
No,
motion
I
to
think-
establish
Okay.
the committee and the
Okay.
liaison appointments. So Benton and Davis made the motions. If we could call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes,
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes. Any board comments on the organizational meeting? Dr. Wagner,
No, I do not have it.
motion to adjourn the organizational meeting?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes. And now on to the regular business. And if we could again, start with a moment of silent prayer. Thank you. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is a separate meeting for me to pull up and my
Yep.
computer.
Yeah, take your time. You're fine.
Just one moment.
We got an extra prayer in and an extra pledge, so
Yeah. It's a good day, right?
it's going to be a good day. Easy. For you. All right, if we can call the roll, please.
Mr. Swager,
Here.
Mrs. Davis,
Here.
Mr. Benton,
Here.
Mrs. Boer,
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
Reading of the notice, please.
This is a public meeting of the Board of Education for the purpose of conducting the school district business. It is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is time in the public participation during the meeting indicated on the agenda. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 3 minutes. Upon request of the superintendent, the district shall make reasonable accommodation for a person with a disability to be able to participate in this activity. A recording shall be made of each meeting of the board as administrative aid and shall be preserved as public document of the board.
Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
I have one small change to the agenda. If you look at item number 6, which should be on the bottom of page 3 if you're on paper, but that's under consent agenda. Actually, it'll go on to page 4, so it'll be section C, 6C. And we have resignation for 2 people there right now, Tyler Hickman and Bonnie Nunley. I want to add Jennifer Villa to that, who's the EMS coordinator. That's the only
January
change is they
19th.
add
Correct.
January 19th, 2024. And that's Jen Villa, EMS coordinator. Other than that, I do not have any changes to the agenda.
Anyone else have any? If I can get a motion to adopt the agenda,
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Thank-
second.
call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Thank you. We have no one signed up for public remarks, so we'll move on to our presentations.
We have one presentation tonight, and that's Mr. Mike Jackson, who's going to talk to us about the wrestling program. I thought it'd be good to have an update, and I know you have prepared quite a bit of information here, so feel free to use the mic there and give the board an update about the current wrestling program.
Well, thank you, and I'll try to stay under the 3 minutes there. First off, I apologize about my clothes. We just came from wrestling, so I probably stink, so I apologize.
By the way, the 3 minutes is for public comment.
Oh,
You don't have to
You had,
register.
you had me
Yeah.
nervous.
Yeah, no. That's only
It's
for
like
public comment.
I was
so-
going to start pitching this paper over.
No, we wouldn't do that to you. So.
All right, well, thank you, Dr. Wagner. Thank you, board members, for giving me the opportunity to talk on behalf of the Johnstown Wrestling Program. My name is Mike Jackson. I'm a lifelong resident of Johnstown, and I'm proud to say I'm a 1994 graduate of Johnstown-Monroe High School. I wrestled and played football for Johnstown, and I married another Johnstown graduate, Mindy Jackson. We have 2 boys that graduated from Johnstown, Hunter and Austin, and Mindy currently works at the high school athletic department. So Johnny blood really runs deep in our family, and we do what we can to support the town and the students of Johnstown. I am currently a sergeant for the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. I've done that for 25 years. During my time at Franklin County, I was given the opportunity to run the defensive tactics program for all the deputies in a 6-year period. I still help with that program today, and that is what led me to help the high school wrestling program 2 years ago. I'd heard stories about the lack of numbers and the problems with the program, the lack of space and participation. I heard rumors of the program being cut from Johnstown schools. So I knew that my background in wrestling and defensive tactics, and with my passion for Johnstown, I could help rejuvenate the program. With the help of the Johnstown athletic staff and the dedication of many volunteer coaches, specifically Josh Erb, we are growing, and we have built something that can be great here in our small town. Over the past 2 seasons, Johnstown Wrestling has grown from 5 wrestlers to 18 as of today. This includes 5 females on our roster. We currently have 4 stats volunteering also their time every weekend to go to tournaments and help our team. We additionally have 4 volunteer coaches dedicating countless hours and giving up most of their weekend for these athletes in our school. We currently have 10 middle school wrestlers, and in addition to that, we have 49 wrestlers in our youth program, kindergarten through 6th grade. So we are growing. We do only have 1 senior wrestler, which is here today. But most of our wrestlers are freshmen and sophomore at the high school level. We also have a growing junior high team, which has 6 8th graders who are lifelong wrestlers moving to the high school next year. This past weekend, our very own Wyatt Smith, 8th grader, placed first place at Big Walnut and was named MVP of the tournament. We expect to have over 20 wrestlers next year. The numbers are holding steady. We're not losing wrestlers. We're actually adding wrestlers in the middle of the season. We actually just added one female wrestler about 2 weeks ago. Not only are we growing in numbers, but we're competing on the mat. Last year, we had 4 of our wrestlers advance from sectionals to the district tournament. One of those wrestlers was brand new to the sport last year. Those 4 were the first district qualifiers Johnstown has had in 5 years. We didn't only have 1, we had 4. This is a big accomplishment for a wrestler. Very few make it that far. In addition to this, we are doing great things this year. We have had 4 tournaments this year, and these are the numbers we're producing. We have had 4 6th place finishes, 4 5th place finishes, 4 4th place finishes, 6 3rd place finishes, 2 2nd place finishes, and 2 1st place finishes in those 4 tournaments. In addition to these medals, we have also had a first in Johnstown history. We had our first Division II girl tournament at the Lady Raider Invitational in Reynoldsburg, where our very own Caitlin Casto placed first place at 135 pounds. To my knowledge, this is the first for our high school. We will continue to grow. We will continue to work hard on the mat and in the classroom. We are dedicated to make Johnstown wrestling better every year. The future looks bright. If any one of you board members or anyone in the audience or anybody out there wants to come see us, we'd love to see you. We have multiple meets coming up. Friday night, the girls are going to go to Madison Plains for a tournament. And Saturday, the boys are going to Amanda Clear Creek. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Dr. Wagner, Derek Busenberg, Robbie Brickner, for giving me this chance to talk about the Johnstown Wrestling Program. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to have 3 of my wrestlers just talk
I was
briefly
going to
about
ask
the
what we
program.
brought.
Yeah, that'd be
Oh,
great.
yes.
Thank you.
Would you come up and just state your name and tell a little bit about yourself?
Good evening. I'm Levi Osborne. I'm the senior wrestler on the team.
My name is Cameron Davis. I'm the junior wrestler on the team.
Quillen Smith, the sophomore wrestler. It'd be great to have a new wrestling facility because our team is growing, which means there could be more things spreading. And we might need water sources or something to clean the mats so people don't get infections or like anything about that. So, yeah.
So as a senior, and this is my second year. Last year I was the first year to go to districts. I personally believe that with the wrestling program growing, it would be very valuable to have a facility of our own, facility that would include like a water station for refilling water bottles, whatnot like that. And also with that, going to districts last year was great. It was great for our wrestling program because I do believe that it had kind of put a light on us. And over the summer and starting the school year, we've had a lot more rejoin this year, and I do believe that that is a big factor in why we've grown a lot.
I've been a part of our program since I was in 2nd grade, and I've seen it grow through many, many adversities. And I can just only imagine what our very own facility would do for our wrestling program. It would give us the chance to compete against other schools at the same level that they train at. As far as I know, we're one of the only schools in Central Ohio without a wrestling facility, so it would just be really good.
Again, I appreciate you guys, the board, giving me time. Also, would like to thank JYA for the facility that we have right now. it's a good wrestling facility right at this moment. So we do what we can, and we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna continue to grow. The numbers are there. I can show you. We're just getting bigger and bigger, and we're getting better. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Coach, before you sit down, thank you for everything you're doing to lead this team and the program. And then at some point next week or so, we can get with Mr. Brickner and Mr. Boosberg and I will sit down and look at some long-range planning, for the program. It'd be good to understand, what you see in the pipeline too, so we can talk about sustainability.
And I want to thank you for your leadership, because that's the only thing that's changed in this program. This program was a dying program, and through your outstanding leadership, it's turned a corner and it's heading in the right direction. So thank you very much for our students.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. Between you and what JYA is doing, with the youth program, getting that foundation, it was lacking. I mean, we were down to 3 wrestlers. Just a few years ago, we had 3 kids wrestling, which is pretty tough to go to meets when there's 3 of you and compete. So then wrestling's about numbers, just like every other sport. It's an individual sport, but you have to have numbers to compete on those team levels and advance, plus the competition just within the practice. So I do appreciate that leadership and getting the numbers not only to grow, sustaining them throughout the season, because we've also had that problem in the past that we're not seeing, where, at the beginning of the season, we'd have 6, 7 wrestlers, and by the end of the season, we'd have 2 or 3. The fact that you're adding to it during the season is phenomenal. So that's great to hear, and I appreciate that. And that's a testament to the students. Your success breeds others to get into the sport. When you're not good at something and they don't see us being good at it and no one's participating in it, it's hard to convince kids to go into that. So by building it from the youth up and then you guys being successful at the high school level, that's what will get the program stronger. So I appreciate that. When do we host one? We do. I just don't know the date. So for those at home that didn't hear that, February 13th, we'll be hosting at the high school a tournament.
Is that also senior night, Coach?
Senior night as well. JYA.
Okay.
Yep. Saturday the 10th is the middle school, LCL.
Is it here?
At the high school. At the high school. Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you. Thank all 3 of you students as well.
Thank you.
All right. Back to you.
Yeah, so we have board committees. Obviously, we had to go through the organizational meeting, so we don't have a lot of committee reports to provide. But policy did meet, so I think Mr. Benton or Mrs. Davis, if one of you want to give some highlights there, please.
Yeah. So the policy committee continues to meet monthly. We've been making really good progress on updating many of our policies. We met last on the 18th. We looked at 14 different policies then. 12 out of 14 of them were from the 1000 section of the policy book and are part of what we are calling our policy catch-up project. Now that our 0 section has been fully updated, we've moved on to the 1000 section. That's going to take a couple months to complete and get us through, but we're keeping on. We're going. Let's see, and then we will have our first reading of those policies likely at our next meeting or shortly after all of the board members get a chance to look at those. And I think that's all we've got as far as updates.
One of the things that we've added to this agenda, which you'll see in the future, is the local professional development committee. Back in the 90s, the state of Ohio turned the licensing responsibilities for professional development responsibilities to local school districts. And as we're updating our policy, it's one of the best practices we can do that. So we'll be doing that as it comes about. So the last time the LPDC, the Professional Development Committee, had met was on October 26th. I'll give you a highlight of that. The members in attendance for that meeting were Stephanie Stuckey, Renee Britton, Annette Price, Kurtz, Ben Jagger, Angel King, and Derek Rosenberg. They had 5 plans that they reviewed, and each staff member has to do an individual professional development plan, and the committee has to review that. Of those 5, 4 were approved, and 1 was sent back to the individual for modifications. I won't get names and all that. The committee also is focused on those whose licenses expire and then need to be reapproved. There were none at this meeting that had that requirement, although that'll be in the future as we get closer to the end of the school year. I'm sure there'll be a few that come up. We also approved contact hours, so those that are working on the professional growth plan are able to show that they engaged in professional development that aligned with their professional growth plan. So those were approved. And then 2 staff members who are no longer with the school district were able to archive their information. The next meeting is scheduled for January 23rd, so I should have a report at one of the board meetings in the future, most likely in February. So our next board meeting is the 22nd.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
On to consent agenda, if I can get a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Resolution 24-01-009, approval of consent. Mr. Schwager, I'm just going to go through these real
Yes,
quick.
please.
Okay. We have board meeting minutes as listed there for December 11th. We have resignations and wanted to call the board's attention to Kevin Bonnie, but also Jennifer Dillon and I mentioned before. And wanted to talk a little bit about each of the 3 of them. Kevin has been our cross-country and track programs associated with them for the past 21 years. He's been really clear in telling the staff that the reason for his resignation is because of family and home commitments, and wants to make sure he can dedicate all his time to his family needs to. He has, though, offered to help with the transition process. We're really appreciative of that. So he's going to help when we have him do coach and help with the onboarding and serve as an advisor. And then he's obviously doing a great job with that program. We really appreciate it. Buddy Nunley, has worked in food service since 2021. And Jen Billis had a few different jobs in the district. She was a parapro in 2013 and 2017. She was a student attendant 2018 and 2021. And then EMIS coordinator from 2021 to 2017. And then we'll get all of those positions posted if the board approves those things. People activity employment, we have 2 people there. Names you can see. You can read them on the sheet there. Volunteers, we have multiple volunteers. We appreciate the support. And then you'll notice that we separate parent volunteers from the responsibility of athletics. In this case, they're all athletics. You can see there. And I think that's it for consent agenda.
Any questions, comments? Obviously, thank you to those folks that have served us there. I know Mr. Hickman will be greatly missed there. I get a lot of positive feedback from the cross-country folks about what a great coach and person that Kevin is. So that'll be a tough one, but I do appreciate that he's going to help the transition to find, he's dedicated to that program. So I know he'll put a lot of effort into making sure it continues to excel. And then, of course, thank you to Bonnie and Jen for their past work here. Any other questions, comments?
All the volunteers who
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, without the parent volunteers, this district struggles. So we do appreciate the volunteerism and certainly rely upon it to be successful. So I do thank them as well.
I do want to add the administrator, especially the trustees, try to stimulate and make sure we have our welcoming for those who have the time and dedicate their talent. So I appreciate that work too.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Call the roll.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
On to the treasurer recommendations.
Yes. The recommendation to approve the donation of $50,000 from Tech Rubber. I believe that is the only donation. What I would like to share with you about that is they are giving $50,000 each year for 10 years, started in 2018. And this money is being set aside into our permanent improvement fund for the stadium. It is intended to fund the meeting room at the stadium.
Is that
Yeah.
a separate fund from tech track and turf? I wasn't aware if that's how it's broken down. Just a question.
Yes, it is. There is a separate stadium fund in one of our 070 capital projects that is separate from the track and the field.
So
Now,
suggestions could be careful conditioning for that.
well, and there must be some funds that the board has already.
We did. We put forward the money based on the donation coming in to build the building, and then the donation to be paid over the 10-year agreement.
Because there is currently money in the fund in addition to this donation.
If I can get a motion,
I'll make a motion. Oh, I'll second it.
and Mr. Benton seconds. Yes, we do always appreciate Tech Rubber's support of this community and this school district. So the original 10-year donation is greatly appreciated every year. That's a substantial commitment to this community and district. So I do want to thank them for that.
Definitely want to thank you for that. I was there at that time, and we were working very hard. The committee was working very hard to secure funds, and we want to thank Tech for standing beside the school.
And for those that have moved into our community, Tech has supported the schools for many, many years beyond this 10-year support that we're talking about tonight. So thank you for it's a generational support that we received from that company and that family.
Yeah, definitely the Chambers family has certainly been supportive of this district in many ways.
For generations.
Yeah, for generations.
Generations.
That's why you'll see the Chambers way out there as a small thank you, but a very large heart thank you for all that.
And of course, we play at Frank Chambers Stadium.
Yes.
We
So-
appreciate that.
And that's, yes. So it continues. They're very supportive of us here in this community. So it's greatly appreciated and well deserved. So thank you again. Any other questions, comments? Call the roll.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Resolution 24-01-011 is Envision Academy Service Agreement for the 23-24 school year.
If I can get a motion,
Motion.
and can we get a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? This is the Envision Academy, so I think everyone knows what we're talking about here. So, okay, call the roll.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Resolution 24-01-012 is the second reading of revised policies as listed. I sent the board some updates, and there was amendment to 0154, so make some changes there and removed LSBA from that policy, and then it's covered by the organizational meeting, which means it's only a year-to-year.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion? Thank these ones, and I thank the. Yeah, I think the two committee members and Ms. Thomas went through these extensively, sending comments. So I do appreciate that. Call the roll.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer.
Yes.
Resolution 24-01-013 are second readings to rescind policies.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? This is on the rescinding of policy.
special meetings, 0165, 2,
Mhm.
7 on there as special. We talked about the special meeting, and then we're adding emergency meetings on there. I know we had that discussion.
Hey, you want me to talk about that?
I
Could
did
Yeah.
that discussion too, so.
You want me to say something?
Will you say that again, Ann?
That we're adding, sorry.
No, no.
That we're adding emergency to the special meetings, because currently we don't have emergency as a separate line item, or I don't know, we call them line items, options.
What it is, and it gets us up to date on things, is that special meeting can be called typically with 24 hours notice. But there are situations where you may need an emergency, so you'd have to waive that. So for example, I know that we, one of my districts years ago, we had a tornado come through and get the board together and sort of make some decisions about some facility needs that we had approved. So it can have for personnel reasons too, if you actually need to get the board together, so you can do it. It has to be truly an emergency, something that can't wait your typical time frame.
So we would have special meetings, which we've had in the past, or we have emergency meetings, maybe nothing has changed. Is it for your, is the concept of emergency meetings spreading wider than it was before, or just we haven't?
No, it's as Mrs. Thomas said, really that just gets us up to date now with things. I don't think we were as clear as we should have been in the older conversation. Now we're just clear. That's always been a provision of the board called emergency meeting.
Or we could just call a special meeting?
Yeah, typically we call special meetings, and even like when Mrs. Thomas noticed that on the 26th, if we end up with our change there, I'll have to take it off cycle and things when we have the provisions, so that becomes a special meeting. But really, the emergency is just that really your notice requirements are not followed where it has to be.
Just a question, on an emergency meeting, can the board take action? On a
Yeah.
special meeting, you cannot.
But you can on a
You
special.
can on a
yeah.
special?
You can on a special meeting.
And
And
you can on an emergency?
Yeah.
Okay.
the idea with a special meeting is that you want it listed as special because it's not following the cadence of what the board approves at the schedule that the board approves at the organizational meeting. So that makes it special. So that's why you'll see that if we move up like February 26th, it becomes a special meeting. If you change a work session to a regular meeting, again, same thing. But the emergency board, so again, it has to be an emergency. Unfortunately, personnel issues, people have passed away. You know, there's things that you have to get the board together quickly or at the facility.
Emergency anymore is like such a trigger word for so many people that everybody is concerned. Use the word emergency.
Yeah.
Like watching the so far.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about it when we were going through a review. Part of it is a challenge because the word emergency has different denotations sometimes. Like if you notice, like we have emergency levies, but it's not really an emergency. We don't like the language, but that's how it's codified in our law. So, but yeah, this would be truly an emergency, and the board can vote, but we want to be able to show that there's a reason.
Just wanted to ask you questions.
Sure.
Any other questions? This is on Resolution 240112, second reading. No, this is on 13, second reading to rescind policies. Any other questions, comments? Call the roll.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Resolution 24-01-014, second reading of replacement policies.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Discussion?
In the case in point that 0165.2, now that we asked the board to rescind the previous policy that was dated, and now we're asking you to approve the new policy as we've talked about for some time about special emergencies. And all that all applies to the new policy.
Could you explain 0167.1, use of electronic mail, text messages? Is that just updating languages as opposed to inscribed notes?
Yeah, it's updating, it's making sure our policy is updated there. The idea there is that anytime there's communication among board members, it really should be of a non-school purpose or non-business purpose. Let's say unless it's something like, hey, can't make a meeting or something like that. It's supposed to be that really not something having to do business related to the school district. So that's part of what's clarified in that language to how the board's concluded.
Well, how, if we want to discuss an issue that's upcoming that we heard about, is that precluding us from doing that?
No, what it allows is a board member to talk to another board member. You're allowed, but because we have a 5-member board, any more than 2 becomes a 4.
Oh, I'm with you. I just
Yeah.
want to be sure that
No,
for anybody
good
listening, that it is not, as long as we're not in a quorum situation, it's
Yeah.
not a problem.
And I will add to it, even though this will be part of the question, you're allowed to go places as a board that is well true, as long as you're not conducting board business. So I'll get that question correctly.
As long
All-
as it's information.
Right. But all 5 were at the varsity show. That's okay. You can sit together. Sometimes people don't, but if you wanted to, it's up to you. As long as you're not conducting board business, that'll happen. Other than you have convocations with your kids, one of all 5 board members. Yeah.
I just wanted clarity,
Yeah.
just so that it could be heard.
And one other point I'll make too is when you look at the policies, some of the policies are being rescinded and replaced. And the reason why they're being rescinded and replaced instead of just updated is we've missed a couple of changes within the system. So Neola gives us updates, and we haven't updated it in such a long period of time that it's easier just to rescind it and then replace it instead of just modifying it because there's too many changes that have been made to the policy. So just so the public understands why we do what we do.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Call the roll.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mr. Swager.
Yes.
Resolution 24-1-015, the second reading of new policies.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
I think I'll bring up that first one.
Yes, please.
One of the things that we talked about, or Mrs. Thomas was asking me when we were reviewing this, and I think it came up in our committee as well too, is what's the role of the Johnstown-Monroe schools? They have, with our CPAC, they call it joint vocational, which really referred to as protect. We have the ability to have a seat on that board. We haven't enjoyed that in the past, and quite honestly. On the western side of Lincoln County, you haven't seen a lot of representation. So Mrs. Thomas was asking about that, and I've been in conversation with the superintendent, Dr. Delaney, and see if I can talk about reorientation and how seats are apportioned. If I recall correctly, just remembering that I believe three seats are from the regional vocational service center too, and maybe more seats. So that is a conversation we're having. But this policy was getting us up to date. Allows to that to occur.
I appreciate that, and I do think individual school districts need to take a little more lead in that. It's critical, and I think everyone knows Western Lincoln County has historically been left out of a lot of those decisions made.
I agree with that. That was a nice way to say it.
And it's where the growth is, right? I mean, you think from Southwest Licking Heights to the Northridge, that's where a lot of the growth is. So we've been aligning with those districts. Yes, you'll see more distinct push forward.
How soon can we appoint someone to actually hit the road running and get started on the issues? Because I know we've made contacts, they've made contacts about how our school might fit in with what their plans are.
We see that. Right now, there's not a provision that has us as a school district sitting on their board, but it's conversations that we have probably last month or so. I do think that maybe we could insert ourselves more in the process, probably attending some of the meetings, showing up, talking about this. It's something we could reach out to some board members.
Are we allowed as guests?
Oh, yes.
Because it's open meeting,
Yeah.
I assume
Yep.
that would be a way to.
We could do guests, and we could talk also about if we want some outreach. It'd be a good idea to talk about the organizational structure, because that's the conversation that
I think it's critical where we're going as a board to be more active in this because we know career development is what we're looking at heavily. So I think we need to take an active role as a board in this.
Well, and I would say that, and you're aware of this, but our voice is being heard more. Look at what you approved recently or last month, where we have the multi-technician program coming in the fall. So, and we're going to be a representative for that Western Lincoln County. So we'll have our seats in this ability. The other three school districts I'm not sure what's going to do. Eventually, I would imagine that there could be some satellites too. Development areas, conversations we're having about the long range plan.
Any other questions on any of the other second reading of new policies? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mr. Swatter?
Yes. On to board comments. Anything? Either of you?
I do think this is an issue that I've been working on, which is the Miles Estate. Basically, we recently had an objection that we would not be able to get some of the artifacts. Could we reverse that and say, go through our attorneys and have them propose a formal request? I think you're probably already on that, but I just want to make sure because I've been working this last couple of weeks, believe it or not, on getting a sketch for what we may like to do in that room and what we might want to do on our mural. And in fact, hopefully, if the snow doesn't deter our efforts this Thursday, we'd like to have a meeting in that room about 5:30 to look it over and think about and to come back with some sketches of what could happen there, given the fact we have a nice muralist. But it's also a lot of it is hinging on what can we do. Can we get some of those artifacts? If we go through our attorneys, it's probably time to do a formal request. If not that, then the best we can do is a replica of what it would have been if it had been these things. But I'd much rather, having seen the list, I'd much rather focus on can we get that. And I know you wrote a great letter, but
No, that's fair.
You were rebuffed,
No, I
so.
think that's fair. That's a good point about making the formal request. We'll follow the legal process now, if you will, because that's.
We'll have to send it to the judge as part of the.
well,
I think it could be attorney to attorney. I don't think it's.
They may not
prejudicial
respond
to-
at this
Yeah, they may
moment.
not. I don't think it's
They won't
prejudicial
let
to
us
the case.
sidebar. But I think attorney to attorney might be good.
We'll give it a try and see
I
if
didn't
it's.
realize the artifacts were part of that.
They're not really, they just said.
Right.
Yeah, but you're right. We been told no because we made a nice ask on
Yeah.
behalf of the district, and really just asked to borrow or to maintain them, and we would not
Right.
fund them permanently. But I'll follow up.
On loan to the museum.
On loan.
I was
Yeah.
just going to say, it's, I
Yeah.
mean, museums
Yeah,
do
we
that
said
all the
we could
time.
curate
They're
and we
on loan
would-
for a specific time
Yeah.
while
Yeah.
showcasing.
But not that I want to jump ahead, but the replica is an interesting point too, because we're probably going to do that for some things that are, my understanding, unrecoverable. So I'm not
Well,
gonna say for things.
What about referring back to the list that we got early?
Yes. Yeah.
Why don't we request everything that's on that list, only we just itemize it back to
Yep.
them so that their memories are faded, and then
Yep.
we'll be able to stimulate that.
Got it.
I still want to hit that June opening.
Yeah.
If we can, so if we could resolve that as soon as possible, and if we can't get through there, I know we're beginning to change people on the management body, maybe they will be able. And I get another point, maybe we can request our attorneys send whatever we're requesting onto each of the management body people, so they see what we're trying to do, it's just really among.
Sure.
Okay.
And then I just wanted to, for a topic for the next board meeting, but for those in the community, obviously our tax valuations came out, and I've seen a lot of debate and comment on that, and I was surprised. I went through mine, and this is mine. It's all public information, so I'll share you mine. My 22 value of my house 3 years ago was $575,300. It went up $78,200 to $653,500. That's a 13.6% increase. My total taxes went up $622.18 for next year, for this coming year. That's a 6.87% increase in my overall taxes. That's $50 a month. With that being said, I did break down each individual, how you get that, in the schools, my school taxes increased 3.95%. My school's tax went up $208.93, and that's on a $653,000 home. Everyone's going to be different based on the value of their house. My county tax actually went down $117.54, which was a 9.69% decrease. My joint vocational school went down $39.70, which is a 8.73% decrease. My library went down $19.66, which is a 14.4% decrease. My parks went down $9.75, which is a 14.4% decrease. And the reason is the valuation of the county and people live here went up, and they can only generate the same amount of money. So those are actually decreasing for the folks that live here. My Monroe Fire went up $540.91, which was a 36.75% increase. That's because we voted for a new firehouse. And then my Monroe Township roads went up $58.99, which is a 14.09% increase. So of that $622 increase, $208 went to the schools, the reductions, and then about $600 went to Monroe Township for the fire and roads. That's where my taxes went. Just so you know, I know there's a lot of comments on schools and everyone else getting mine went up for the schools, but it went up 3.95%. So it's a much smaller portion than I think a lot of people see of the overall. And again, I live in Monroe Township, so a lot of that increase is because we did vote to approve the fire levy, which was needed. I'm not, but recognize when you go in there and look at your tax bill that it is not going exclusively to the school, and it's really a fairly small increase of 3.95%, at least on mine. So I do encourage those, when you get yours, to go look at those to know where your tax dollars actually are going, because we have, as a board, have committed to keeping our taxes as they are and not asking for any increases. We got the renewals the last two levies and did not ask for additional dollars. And I do want to make sure people understand that that is what we are sticking to. That increase is based off the floor levy, the percentage that we're guaranteed through the state, off the levies that we collect. So that's where it went. We will be working on, for the next board meeting, I was going to get several different valuations, and we'll do a presentation on it so everyone can see it in pictures and see how it actually works. But I did want to express that because, I'm nerdy and I spend my days looking at this stuff and figuring out my percentages. So anyways, that's all I had. Anything for the superintendent?
I have a few things real quick. Wanted to give the board an update. Been working closely with Johnstown City representatives, and that Water and Sewer Consortium is still moving forward. It actually has an acronym now as a name, so it's the Johnstown, Alexandria, and Granville Consortium, so that it's now the JAG Consortium. That's what they're referring to. We'll see if that sticks. But the conversation is going well. I was at a meeting last week and appreciate being involved with the planners and engineers from the city. And what I like also is that they're looking at not just Johnstown proper, which is about now 3 square miles, but all looking at our entire 52 square miles of the school district, because it's all impacted. So I'll continue to keep the board updated. But again, I'm appreciative of the work that's being done, and I'm glad we have a seat at the table and we're really taking advantage of it. After one of the board meetings, we became aware, it was after our last public meeting, there's a project called the Four Corners Project. And since there was information about that, kind of surprised about that. It didn't. When we went to the Monroe Township meeting, it was discussed 4 or 5 years away from development, which we thought maybe a little bit far off. But, so we got some work to do. It's not a whole lot public with that, but that's on our radar. We're looking at that. Ultimately, what's important about this whole thing is that the board has set down or organized an action plan where we're reverse engineering the population into the growth of the population into this growth of the school district, and what we want to do to maintain one nice building in the school. We know we're going to have a couple buildings that keep the school district about 4,600 students. So I'll keep you updated because that one concerns me. Athletic Boosters meeting, I attended that last month. I was there with Mr. Swagger, and Mr. Giannini was there and leading the meeting. So good meeting, a lot of questions about branding, but I think we were able to answer some questions and move things forward. I think anytime there's a change, it's really difficult. But, we appreciate the audience of letting us come to the meeting. And then as a follow-up, sometime this month, I'm going to give some little local vendors as well too, and make sure we talk about how we're sourcing our materials for spiritware stores. I did find recently, I think it's in the board and some others, that there's an online store that already started that doesn't have any affiliation with the school district, that's trying to sell our items. So we're in the process of a cease and desist on that, because that's exactly the kind of thing that takes away from our boosters or other support organizations. So we're trying to work on that. It's amazing to me, and probably naive, but amazing how they pick up the designs of those trademark and name it online store. So
Exact. Studied it.
from what I can tell, it looks pretty exact. My suspicion is they probably picked it up off of an email, which really would be hard because it actually has the trademark. I can't find exactly McDonald's outlet. Looks like maybe out of New York. It's this face that doesn't mean that that's the production house or the original. So,
And did we talk to the boosters about any of their Facebook pages shutting off comments so they're not tagging, if we could? So what's happening on some of these, like the different programs have their own booster Facebook pages. These out-of-state people that are taking logos are commenting and putting their links right into those comments.
Oh,
So I'd ask that we actually shut off those comments when we see those. That way people aren't clicking on links and buying stuff from we want them to go through the boosters. I don't want them tagging onto the boosters and then people ordering off of these illegal websites, getting merchandise and the boosters getting nothing and almost appearing as though we're supportive of it.
Mr. Kennedy stopped that. We were able to.
Okay.
Yeah, we were able to shut a couple of those down.
Yeah. Okay,
But
I appreciate
that's a good
it.
point, though. That's the strategy is to look on.
Yeah, they just try, just like when you're viewing the games, they always try to hit their, links to watch the basketball game, try to, so that the comments is where you got to watch where they're tagging into.
We create these agendas well in advance, so I think it's kind of old news that the board office is now, the old board office has been demolished and.
Every time I pull in, I still stare and go, well, it looks different.
Yeah,
It doesn't.
yeah. But nice job on that. We
Yeah.
have a graduate, anyone working on that did a nice job. Everything's removed. Mr. Jenny led that along with Mr. Burke, and we made sure that that soil's been compacted again. So as they, I guess every 2 feet they were doing that.
Excellent.
It should be ready for future build. The other part of that, which will tie with the next item, is Monroe Township was able to conduct some training there. We got good use of that building on its last legs.
Yeah.
So that was good. I wanted to read a letter actually that we received from the Monroe Township Fire Department, and they'd like to take a moment to thank the school district administration, we should also say the board that, for allowing the use of the district office for fire training. Over the past 2 weeks, our crews have trained on victim search and rescue, fire suppression techniques, rescue of a downed or injured firefighter, and ventilation, just to name a few. Our goal is to provide the community with prepared and dedicated firefighters when needed. This is only achievable by being a student of our trade every day of our careers. Today, this letter was dated right before the holiday, but we didn't have board meetings at that point. Today, more than ever, we know that collaborative efforts are needed to have a successful and vibrant community. Johnstown-Monroe schools have always been a valued partner and a part of the success of us all. Your dedication to the fire department and community is appreciated. If you can ever be of any assistance, please do not hesitate to reach out. Sincerely, Josh Harrison Cap. I thought that was a nice letter.
Yeah, very nice. And we appreciate them coming over and training as members of this community. I certainly enjoy a fire department that's well trained.
Yeah. And then last I have on my list is just to call attention again. We typically have a work session later in the month, but this one I changed to a regular meeting, so we will meet in here on the screen. We have some presentations I'll share with the board. Mr. Schwager, I'll talk to Mrs. Drummy, and if we can get our tax presentation, we'll try to get that on the agenda as well too. Mrs. Drummy will talk about that, see if that's possible for the 22nd, and then we get some sample properties and do a formal rundown of the breakdown. And that's all I have, unless there's questions from the board.
Any questions? Yeah. If I can get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Discussion? Call the roll. Get home time to watch Washington win.
Watch Washington?
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer was first.
Yes.
Mrs. Bueller,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Meeting adjourned. 6:26.